It is often from the pages of National Geographic that I draw inspiration for my travels. A few weeks ago I was reminded of an article on Morocco, but I couldn't remember either the volume or the year. It was only by poking through the historical index that I traced the story back to June 1935. Having retrieved the volume from the pages of the National along with the first color photos of the Maghreb and Moroccan souks, one of those maps for which the National became so famous jumped out at me. From looking at a map and letting the imagination take its course by planning a trip, the step is really a moment. I don't like traveling alone too much, but these days finding company is easy. Today the world travels fast and in real time. All it takes is a brief chat with friends, but just to establish time, route and availability, and that's it. The best place to take off from Tangier? But undoubtedly, the Hôtel Ville de France, the one that still preserves intact on the third floor, room 35, the room in which the painter Henri Matisse loved to stay, and from the view of its window, he drew inspiration for some of his most beautiful paintings. We were talking about Tangier, the White City. One only has to take 2 steps in the city to understand the reason for the nickname. Traditionally local beer cap in place and ready to go. Too bad it's a non-alcoholic beer. When in Rome, do as the Romans say. Our initial route would be south, but we are romantics. And so first a detour to Cape Spartel, where a lighthouse seems to separate the waters of the Atlantic from those of the Mediterranean. And its light seen from afar marks the homecoming for sailors who have crossed the ocean. Atlantic on our right as far as Essaouira. The first welcome surprise is the fortified town of Asila, which I make amends I had never even heard of, but which on the other hand really deserves at least a stop. In our case, then, having already grinded some good kilometers and considering that it is midday, a stop is really very welcome. But it is worth first and without hurry to wander a little through the alleys of the Medina. A recharge to the blood sugar was really what was needed to restore vigor in pushing on the pedals, at least until the day's stage, the city of Marrakech, where, especially in the historic and older buildings, the wounds of the recent earthquake are really impressive. And here is a Morocco you don't expect, with thickly cultivated green valleys. And a Morocco you expect, with flocks crossing your road and trucks blocking your way. And I'd rather not be too close by if that catches a breeze. Coffee break at one of the many cars equipped as cafeterias. And lunch break at some small street food store. And break for mechanical accident. If it happens to you, don't be like us who trusted a local tire shop, kind for goodness sake, but more used to truck rims than delicate bike rims. 1 hour pit stop, and believe me, I seriously feared we would never start again with a healthy bike. Instead, miraculously, in the late afternoon, we managed to reach Rabat, the capital of Morocco, and to pedal along the Andalusian walls that enclose a Medina that, unlike those in other Moroccan cities, retains a traditional and less touristy soul. And as in all Medinas, the beating heart is the market, where you can find everything, from woolen kilim carpets to traditional Moroccan clothes, all kinds of knickknacks, an endless variety of spices, and where you can't miss a store for mint leaves, a classic Moroccan tea ingredient. But the most beautiful part of the city is the Kasbah of the Odaya, a fortified village inside the imperial city accessed through a gate and enclosing a typically Hispanic setting with cobblestone streets and white houses. Rabat Casablanca is 100 kilometers. And entering the city, the magical atmosphere of the film, with the mysterious Ingrid Bergman and the tenebrous Humphrey Bogart come back to mind. You almost seem to hear her asking Arthur Wilson to play a song with him that he graciously begins with,
"You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sight is just a sight."
But no. First, the film was shot in studios in California, and of that imaginary Casablanca, if anything was ever there, now there is nothing left. Anyway, honorable mention to the Hassan II Mosque, overlooking a promontory facing the ocean, which until our arrival was third in the world. But since a few days it has moved up to fourth.
Which is still a good result.
The minaret, on the other hand, remains the tallest in the world at 210 meters. Outside Casablanca, 100 easy kilometers await us that largely follow the coastline before we come across in El Jadida, also known as the Mazagan Fortress, where European and Moroccan cultures met and influenced each other. A seaside city still little known to tourists. And in fact, wandering around the streets of the walled city of foreigners are few in sight. Instead, they abound as soon as an opening opens in the alleys, the city's soccer teams. And could Antonio, former bomber and number 9 of Chivasso soccer, miss performing a spot kick? Of course not. Yes, however, this was out of meter. There is a bad air in the morning, but a rainbow takes care of it to give us back the sun and a smile. Temperatures, very cool in the morning on previous days, are gradually rising as we pedal south. And along the way, a few things suggest to us that, when the wind blows, it always blows one way. When midday reminds us that eating is a primary necessity, it is nice to get lost in some souk in search of a secluded place to down a bite and enjoy the local culture.
Sergio, questa musica è tremenda.
Non puoi giudicare la musica solo così. Ascolta bene le parole, il testo. È quello che è meraviglioso. Ascolta.
Fulfilled in body and spirit, we could resume our course pushing hard on the pedals, always on unfrequented roads. And then came the wind. We'd been waiting for it for days. The wind that pushed Columbus to the Canary Islands and then to the New World, and now pushes us to Essaouira.
E allora Antonio, come si chiama sto vento? Aliseo! E porta da bestia!
We rush past some coastal towns where fishing is the primary activity, and it can be really generous. And the Aliseium pushes us, without giving us too much trouble on the pedals, until we put Essaouira in our sights. From the cannons of the fortress, the Atlantic lets us know that with this wind we'd better forget about having our swimsuits in the bike bag. The swim in the Atlantic, I guess we'll postpone it until next time. Better a quieter ride in the Kasbah. However, I would like to have more information about what is meant by Viagra for women in both express and turbo versions. Meanwhile, we continue in our search for a riad for the night and a restaurant for dinner. Tonight for us, Moroccan couscous. With the dawning of the new day, every morning we resume early with the usual rituals, which always repeat themselves in an almost identical way, almost with monotony. And once we gain through the alleys the exit from the city of Essaouira, we leave behind us the waters and the wind of the Atlantic. The journey towards the hinterland and the Moroccan Atlas Plateau begins. And it takes only a few kilometers to see the landscape quickly veer in shape and colors until it takes on that typical arid and desert aspect, which will keep us company until our final destination, the Todra Gorges. On an unexpected footpath, we arrive in the city of Marrakech, where the minaret of the Kutobia Mosque looks like a beacon pointing us in the direction to Jamaa El Funa Square, the central square of Marrakech. An endless line of gigs shows us the way that leads us directly into the center of the square, which is the most important meeting place of the Medina. Surely one of the most famous places in all of Africa, as well as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The origin of this square is not known, nor is the very origin of its name. What is certain is that life here virtually never stops, and the square changes its appearance several times a day. But we will have way and time to explore Marrakech and its square on our return to the city. First, we still have to drive a few hundred kilometers eastward. And we resume in the morning, following the roads leading to the Atlas Mountains, where, although it is now almost spring, snow remains on the highest peaks. The road would also be one of the main routes in the Atlas, but fortunately for us, the landscape is very distinctive and there is very little traffic. There are not many towns we encounter along our way. Tourism has not yet arrived here, and go figure if it ever will. Few resources around here, but a skewer and a coffee break, fortunately, can almost always be found. Just before Ouarzazate, a detour of about 10 kilometers takes us away from the main road. And a few young cyclists escort us a few meters down the road to the village of Ait-Ben-Haddou. a 1,000-year-old village that stands along the banks of the Ouarzazate River. In the local language, these fortresses were called Ksar, and this one originated along the caravan route between the Sahara Desert and the present city of Marrakech. It is likely that none of the buildings really date back 1,000 years. They are built, however, using traditional methods, with mud and straw kneaded and dried in the sun. It is more credible that the present houses date from after the 17th century, but the charm remains unchanged. With a short walk, you can reach the ridge of the hill on which the village stands. And from here you can observe, on one side the arid desert aspect, and on the other the valley made fertile by the presence of the river. With a quick ride of a few kilometers, a little further north meets the mysterious Kasbah of Tamdakt. It is unguarded, and it pours almost abandoned in a very critical condition. Even the village where the remains stand seems totally deserted. Yet, this Kasbah retains a mysterious charm. Little is known about its history, which seems to stop suddenly and around the 1940s with its abandonment. But about the reasons for its abandonment, no one can tell us anything. Not even a sleepy watchman who seems totally disinterested in both our presence and the history of the place. Just one dog keeps us company. Some parts of the Kasbah have collapsed or are badly damaged, who knows, perhaps also due to the recent earthquake. One gets the distinct impression that in a few years there will be very little left to see here. And that is a real shame. No one seems to care. We continue to ride on a plateau just over 1,000 meters above sea level that shows an arid desert aspect interrupted by a few rare green oases and where numerous herds of camels roam freely. We advance in this environment that is a little strange to us, with these large uninhabited spaces, where the presence of man is witnessed only by the ribbon of the road, where, by the way, the traffic is very modest, and by a few scattered hamlets here and there. At a traffic circle, a large stone chak reminds us that we have arrived in Ouarzazate, a Moroccan city known because it is home to several studios and where a variety of films with desert settings have been filmed, such as Lawrence of Arabia or Tea in the Desert. Around, however, there seems to be no one, and the city appears completely deserted. Yep, we had missed one fact. We are exactly in the period of Ramadan. Even the famous Medina, which would deserve a visit, is currently closed to tourists. And before sunset, even finding a bite to eat is almost a feat. Everything is closed. Fortunately, it is less complicated to find a traditional riad in the old city to spend the night. With the new morning, we still have a little over 200 kilometers to go before we reach the Todra Gorges, where we will write the word end to our 1,400 kilometers journey on Moroccan soil. And the landscape that accompanies us on this last stretch remains unchanged in its arid aspect. On the way, we encounter just a few Berber villages where we make a few stops to catch our breath, enjoy a coffee.
Café? Oui. Trois cafés. Trois. Merci.
In one such village, we realize that all the world is a country. Here too, soccer coaches are consumed in indispensable directions to young players. Tactics, however, to be revised, because in 20 seconds they are down by a penalty goal. We have been on the road for more than 2 weeks now, and we are about to begin the third. To be honest, it is not that we are in such a big hurry. We can ride at the right pace, taking our time to observe this brick-colored landscape, which is only seemingly always the same, but in truth often reveals a few oases and a few small Berber settlements that retain an appearance that I could not describe otherwise than Moroccan. A break at the edge of the desert induces us to philosophical reflection. Generosity of offering in food is not always repaid with gratitude.
Antonio, guarda che il cane ti sta facendo la pipì sulla bicicletta.
Porca mi...
To reach the Todra Gorges in the eastern part of the High Atlas mountain range, once you leave Ouarzazate, you have to travel 200 kilometers to the east. In between, about halfway, there is only the oasis composed of the town of Ait-Ben-Haddou, a crossroads that serves as the entrance to a valley where the Rose Festival is celebrated every year. However, for the record, we did not see a single flower stalk. Not too bad, because our attention can finally focus on a gorge road, enclosed between the mountains and leading to the Todra Gorge, a canyon with walls up to 160 meters high, carved over the centuries by the river of the same name. Today, the river is little more than a stream, but a few millennia ago it filled the gorge. Of course, the area is no longer as remote as it once was, but the beauty of the place has remained unchanged. It was worth getting this far. Well, now it is just a matter of returning first to Marrakech by bus, and then home to Italy. Yep, Marrakech. On the way out, we were in a hurry, but now we can devote some time to this fascinating city, which boasts a Medina with narrow streets, alleys, and with a truly remarkable market attached. But before entering, my advice is to learn well the following phrase.
Ma fish plus.
Ma fish plus.
Ma fish plus. Ma fish.
That means, I'm out of money. Otherwise, you will not come out unscathed, and you will be yanked left and right relentlessly in order to get you to buy any junk. And toward evening, when the colors are enhanced by the impending sunset, it is nice to get lost among the stalls in the square, where fruits of all kinds are displayed with absolute precision. Here one can find all kinds of spices and dried fruits, the ever-present traditional snails, and an endless array of improbable remedies for every kind of evil that afflicts mankind. Here you can find some fool of a tourist who, fascinated by the hidden eyes of some girl, lets himself be painted a very expensive henna tattoo. But above all, in the evening you cannot miss the spectacle of the square, which from 4 p.m. turns into an open-air restaurant with dozens of stalls where you can have a last meal before going back. And with the darkness of the evening also comes for us the time to return home.